Hey there, so we're into another week, and this is a really, I would say, life-changing. Is that pushing it too much? Probably, but this is a pretty big week ahead, all the same. First of all, it starts with a new moon in Gemini at 24 degrees in the sign of Gemini, and it ends the week with the sun going into the sign of Cancer, which actually triggers the summer solstice if you're in the northern hemisphere with me, or the winter solstice if you're in the southern hemisphere. So, yeah, that just on its own, having a new moon and then a season change at the end of the week would mark this as one of those weeks ahead that, yeah, could feel quite life changing. But we've also got Chiron moving into the sign of Taurus. Now, Chiron has been in the sign of Aries for many years now. And if you are someone born with Chiron in Aries, most likely you felt it and you would have gone through your Chiron return, which is a pretty memorable time. I've gone through mine. Now we've got Chiron going into Taurus. He's known as a wounded healer. And yeah, it's going to change our references towards pain. He's going to be changing our references towards looking after ourselves and healing ourselves. And so it's really going to be setting a whole new scene for us. So, yeah, those are the three main bits of news. Aside from that, we've also got a lot of stuff going on with Venus. Venus, newly in the sign of Leo, she's going to be making a sextile with Uranus, a trine with Neptune, and also an opposition to Pluto. So, what I'm going to do in this short video is just run you through all of these different things that are coming up to give you a sense of what's going on. Before we do that, I just want to show you, this is the chart for the solstice for when the sun goes into Cancer on Sunday the 21st. Now, I should say this is set for the London time zone, London, UK. I live in Portugal, but I'm part of that time zone, and it's the midpoint for all the time zones around the world, hence why I've chosen it. But what I notice about this is that we've got some oppositions to Pluto around the time of the solstice. And we've also got T squares from Pluto to Chiron, newly in his own new sign. And also, Chiron's making a square to Jupiter. He's already been doing that for a while. So, yeah, we've got this square energy, this opposition energy coming in at the time of the solstice. So, I'll talk through that. Anyway, let's get cracking. By the way, if you're new to this channel, my name's Louisa. Welcome to Feel Good Astrology. Each week, I look at the planetary picture and give you a little bit of a heads up as to what the themes are that I see coming up. Now, with this, I talk about new moons and full moons, but I don't actually talk about where the moon makes a conjunction with this, that, and the other, just because the moon moves really fast. And so I really want to just focus on where all the other planets are making aspects to each other. If you want to go down to a much deeper level where you understand what aspects the moon is making on a day-by-day basis, then please feel free to join my community. It's on the School platform. It's www.school, that's SKOOL.com/feel-good astrology. Now, it's actually free to join. It's completely complimentary. All you need to do is just click on the link. You can also scan the QR code above and it will take you straight there so you can join. There are other benefits to joining, but for instance, you will get more of a detailed breakdown every few days. I try and do it every day. There's usually 4 or 5 forecasts covering the breadth of the whole week. And yeah, so it goes a bit deeper if that's what you're interested in. Anyway, let's have a look and see what's coming up. So on Monday, the biggest thing is obviously the new moon in Gemini. Now, the new moon itself, I won't say too much about it because I have actually got a new moon forecast that you can watch, which is separate, where I actually talk a little bit about how that's going to affect you according to your ascendant sign. It's a new moon forecast with all 12 little micro forecasts according to your own ascendant, your own rising sign. So listen out for that. But essentially, a new moon is there to give us a new start, a fresh new start. And in terms of these fresh new starts, this one's in Gemini, which is a very lively, fun, fascinating, curious kind of sign. Gemini is a very social sign. If I was to think about what's the most social sign of the zodiac, I probably would say Gemini. All my great friends who are like really well connected and fascinated by things tend to have a strong Gemini. So this should be the start of something that could grow your energy in connection with other people. Now, it's not necessarily deep connections, but it's getting your feelers out, finding all sorts of new information in your local community. It's really about, to me, I always think of it as a sign about going for coffee, going for coffee, having a quick chat, and then going your separate ways and doing the next thing, like going to the market, saying hello to a few people, then off to the shops, then off to your neighbor. You get home and you're chatting with your neighbor over the fence. To me, this is short bursts of energy, short bursts of greetings, catching up. There's a lot of information exchange that happens with the sign of Gemini. And I think it always brings us back to the narrative that we grew up with. I always think that we learn how the world is according to our childhood, early first rules. I do think that the narrative that you find yourself in, your community narrative, becomes a lot more important at these times. So, yeah, this is going to be bringing about some changes. Moreover, it's in a sextile with Chiron as this new moon approaches. So, Chiron and the new moon. Chiron is about healing. I said at the start, he's the wounded healer. There's so much more I'm going to be talking about Chiron this week as well. Obviously, I'm going to be doing some videos about Chiron moving from Aries and to Taurus. So I don't want to say too much. Right now, Chiron's at the end of Aries and he's been there for a really long time. And so at some level, and he's at 29 degrees, which is seen as being a pretty wild card of a degree. It often brings out a strong need to sum up this era. And so in many ways, right now, we're summing up what has happened over the last 5 years. Definitely, I would say a huge turning point for so many people was coming into that COVID era. That seemed the phenomenon of COVID and how that changed everything for so many people. But it actually started before then. We're talking 2018 and into 2019, in the early days of Chiron in Aries, up until now. During that time, there's been quite a lot of political changes. There's been changes in the way we communicate with each other. And all of this, I would say, is really about our identity. And so this new moon could be about to create some freedom for us from some of the pain that we've experienced in recent times and from some of the difficulties in understanding what that means to us now. Like, how has it changed us? Who are we now? The sign of Aries really does bring up identity quite a bit. So, yeah, I do think there's some honoring going on, some summing up as this new moon comes in. So, yeah, I think this is quite helpful. I'll talk about Venus at the end a little bit. As we're coming into Tuesday, there's not so much other than what's going on with the moon, so I won't touch on that here. Wednesday is a huge day, not only because we've got Venus coming into a trine with Neptune and also the moon's changing signs, and then Venus is going into an opposition with Pluto. That alone is going to be setting off quite a few different energies. But when you see there's a lot going on with the moon, to me, Wednesday is a day when we're going to get very stirred up. So if you were looking ahead and trying to find out when's the safest days to do stuff, I would say Tuesday's one of those blank canvas days. And Wednesday is one of these days when there's so much going on, you might get overwhelmed, in particular with the exact opposition between Venus and Pluto. Yeah, it's a day of overwhelm and also a day of when we're wanting to feel a lot stronger in ourselves. We're wanting to, yeah, feel central in our own story. And sometimes that doesn't happen like that. Sometimes we're doing stuff for other people, we're in work, and it's all about our work duties and not about us. There's a part of us that really wants to be seen on Wednesday. As we're coming into Thursday, again, we've got a much more quieter day. There's only one real notable exact aspect, and that's the moon trine Saturn. Again, if you want to hear about all the nitty gritty moon stuff, then come and join me in my free community. But as we're coming into Friday, there's a lot of stuff going on, and this is the day when Chiron moves into Taurus. Now, at this point, I just want to say Chiron is not moving into Taurus for the rest of the duration. He's moving into Taurus for 3 months. He'll be back into Aries September the 18th. So we're getting a trial here. So what's coming up is Chiron's moving into Taurus, which is going to give us a real different energy towards our healing, a real big shift from being worried about how we were perceived, our identity politics and censorship actually seems to be some of the big themes of the Chiron in Aries days. And also positionism, I think that's a word, but people have been really in their positions and very defensive since Chiron's been in Aries. We're in the time when, during the COVID phenomenon, there were, the people that were saving grandma, the ones that were absolutely killing grandma, according to your viewpoint. Same with world politics. Never has, I don't think, in my lifetime, I've never seen such a strong change in people's politics. I've seen two families run out of town for having a different, not my town, but I know of these people. I've seen two couples being run out of town by people bullying, like people ganging up on people that just don't agree. And they come from the same culture, they come from the same ethnicity. They've probably have very similar lives, but just in recent times, the political shifts and people feel differently. And rather than people having conversations and finding out, okay, so you vote differently for me, what does that mean? What made you come to that conclusion? None of that. There's been this kind of outrage that people might have a different position. And then, of course, once you see somebody's position, you automatically, and I think this being encouraged by the media and how the media has been speaking almost 24/7, when you realize you have a position, someone holds a different position, by default, you're looking at them, you're looking at your opposite, you're looking at somebody who is different from you. And I think the media is really complicit in stirring up the shit with humanity, really, truly, because they've been goading people from both sides. I've noticed it, you know. And also, if you're very neutral and you sit in the middle, you also get a lot of this. I've noticed, because I felt very middle on a lot of things. No real position ever satisfies all of my viewpoints. But if you're a middle person, then you get both sides assuming that you're on the other. So, we're hopefully coming out of this time of real strong positions. And I think when we come into Taurus, Taurus is a lot more conciliatory. Taurus is much more about comfort and our nervous system. And Taurus is much more about feeling safe in our community, safe in ourselves and in our bodies. So I do think we're coming into a really good time, and we're getting a try before we buy kind of energy. I always think when a planet is in that sort of transitioning phase, moving from one to the other, that it's really good to get into the other energy as soon as you can, even though later on this year in September, Chiron's going to go back into Aries until April. I really recommend that you embrace this new Chiron in Taurus energy and also honor the passing of Chiron in Aries. And I'm going to be talking about honoring the passing of it. There's a lot for us to unwrap and make sense of. And I think when you come to the end of a relationship, I know some people who, and fair play to them that they can do that. It's not my style because it just doesn't work for me. Some people, they come to the end of a relationship and it's done and dusted, and then they're already fresh into their new relationship. For me, it takes a long time to unpack what happened, why it happened, what did I learn from it, a long time. And I think sometimes having that little break in between the two planets or the two signs gives us that moment to come back into ourselves. If you're somebody with a lot of mutable signs like me in my birth chart, or moon in Pisces, where you're a little bit shocked and you absorb everything, having that little space is really helpful because it helps you to come back into yourself, really work through it, and then you go into that new sign expression. So I will be talking about that in my Chiron forecast later on this week. So watch out for those if that sounds like your kind of thing. So Friday, is a day when there's a signal that there's something new, that maybe we can move out of these times of positions and that we can start moving into a time where we actually think about the impact this is having on our nervous systems. I mean, growing up and then all of a sudden coming into this really topsy-turvy time where all of a sudden you couldn't trust your neighbor, you couldn't trust your family members. I've heard people talking about how, because of political affiliations, that you cannot trust your family members anymore. And I understand that feels really strong. We all have issues with our families from time to time, but the level of separation that has come up during these particular years, I think has been really huge. And of course, the moment we fall out with the people that maybe we've been a bit more stable and had some security with, that really damages our inner certainty, our inner calm, our inner restful state. And I think our nervous systems probably are really shot from everything that's occurred. So I really look forward to Chiron going into Taurus. I think there's going to be a lot of restoration, and that's what I would really like to see happen. And so Friday is almost like a beacon. There's a flag going in the ground to say we're into a new stage now. We're ready to move forwards with a bit more self-love and maybe a bit more respect for other people, just as we expect people to respect that we might have thought about things before we've made a decision about something. We might afford that to everyone else. It's very easy to say, oh, they haven't thought about it, that's why they've made that decision. And that's not necessarily true. I definitely heard that in terms of mandates for health products and masks and things like that. And I definitely hear it in terms of politics too. So yeah, I think this is big. Other things, we've also got the moon going into Virgo on Friday. And again, natural health and healing is something that's really close to my heart. But the moon, when she goes into Virgo, she really picks up that kind of earth witch energy where she wants to gather in some freshly cut herbs and at the right time make an infusion. All of that natural stuff comes up. And yeah, we can get a little bit hypochondriac-ish when the moon goes into Virgo, but I actually think it's quite helpful. There's a real sort of grounding energy coming in and a hell of a lot of moon stuff too. So Friday's a big day. I would plan some rest, some grounding, absolutely. Maybe set aside some time to reflect on what's happened over the last at least 5 years. What changes have you gone through? What changes has your body gone through? And how does your nervous system feel? Do you feel relaxed in your body? Because this could almost be like a health audit for yourself, an emotional, physical, spiritual health audit. I actually might write that into my next load of notes, actually. So, yeah, I think this is a big thing. And then Saturday is interesting. The big point of interest, I would say, Saturday the 20th. We've got Uranus in a square to the nodes. Uranus doesn't square the nodes very much. Uranus is so slow moving. He's going to be in Gemini until, I think, is it 2033? I can't remember off the top of my head. I haven't learnt it parrot fashion. And the nodes move really slowly. They take 18 months to go through a sign. And so for these guys to come into what's known as a T-square, where you've got the North Node and the South Node, and then Uranus right slap bang in between on Saturday, it takes a lot. It doesn't just happen really easily. I'm wondering why this looks like this. It's Uranus versus the true node or the mean node. Okay, which one is this? And then on Saturday, the 20th, we've got Uranus in a square with the nodes. Now, if you've got eagle eyes, you might be looking and saying, hang on a second, Louisa. These nodes say 154 and Uranus is 306. That's not exactly in a square. In my chart here, this has got the true position of the nodes, but there's also a mean position of the nodes. The nodes appear to be kind of needling backwards and forwards all the time. They're dancing around a degree, like the mean node is always picking up the average node. It's not actually a planet, it's a calculation. The node is based on cycles and it's calculated, but it appears like the true node on every day is just ever so slightly different, whereas the mean is a much smooth calculation. And so whether you are somebody who loves the true node or the mean node, and this is representing the true nodes, Uranus is exactly square the mean node on this day. Now, in many respects, this is less about the exact aspect, because actually Uranus coming into a square with the nodes takes a really long time to come around, and it doesn't just ease off the next day. It's slowly building and then it comes into its exact moment and then it slowly fades away. But Uranus moves really slowly and the nodes take 18 months to go through a sign. And so a square to Uranus is not a common thing. So it is still really important. And Uranus is talking about our attitudes to change, is really talking about our innovation. Are we ready for something fresh? Are we ready for something new? And in this position in between the South Node and also the North Node, there's this balance. Now, is Uranus, is your ability to move forwards, is it dependent on what's happened in the past, or is it really looking into the future? I always think with these balanced points, and they're also referred to as skipped steps, also it recognizes where maybe we haven't completed something to do with Uranus in the past. And so, like past stuff to do with Uranus would be breakups, because Uranus creates change and it can sometimes create a cataclysm. It's very rocky. Uranus brings in a whole new consciousness that kind of shatters the old reality. And so breakups, accidents, for instance, I migrated, I left the UK in just before Uranus went into Taurus, actually. So, like that was a huge change, like living in one country and then living in another, the birth of a child, the start of a relationship. All of these things are real Chiron things, leaving a job, leaving an identity, realizing that was the old me, this is the new me. So Uranus, challenged by the past and also challenging the future a little bit, to me is saying there's something from the past you haven't yet really processed, something to do with maybe the shock, the chaos, the change of consciousness. Have you completely come into your new consciousness? Because if you're still looking over your shoulder a little bit, it's really difficult to look straight ahead and to see the impacts of your change and how that's going to go. So to me, that's also something that's happening this weekend. And then on Sunday, we've got the solstice. And again, I've just put in the solstice chart. It's really, I think the solstice is a turning point. This is when we've got the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere and the longest night of the year in the southern hemisphere. But it's saying, okay, we've come so far, it's time for a new season. And this is starting off the season, like wherever you are, the sun going into Cancer brings us back home. It brings us to issues of childhood, issues of parents, issues of where we might want to self-protect, issues where we might feel over emotional about something. There's a lot of emotion coming up. And so actually, I think this is the perfect time to go through a really big shift from Chiron going into Taurus, asking your nervous system, what stress, what hurt, what wounding have you been holding on to? Then the next day, looking at Uranus and asking, okay, have you let go of that old consciousness? Have you dealt with the shattering? Have you dealt with the chaos and the upset from a change, from maybe a bereavement, something being left behind? And then as we go into this solstice time, I think it's bringing up the energy to see your history, see your memories, and to feel them fully. So this weekend, I think, is actually a watershed moment. Yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts. So, like I shared at the start, if you would like to get a much deeper look at this on a day-by-day basis, then just come to my school community. If you'd like me to pay this kind of scrutiny to your chart and talk you through the themes that are coming up, your own stories, your consciousness stories, maybe look at what's lingering and look at what's really coming up and what you can get excited about, then just get in touch. I've got my details below. I hold my diary on Calendly. Just check out my dates, book yourself in and invite me to work with you, and it can go really smoothly just like that. So I'm here to help if I can, but if not, just have a beautiful week ahead anyway. I hope this has been helpful and hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.